From the balcony of the celestial spire, Queen Seralith watched the horizon blaze as another rebel stronghold fell to imperial fire. The air shimmered with distant bombardment, streaks of plasma carving bright scars across the dusk. Below her, the capital glowed in obedient silence. Millions of lights, millions of subjects, all watching, all waiting. The Empire was stable. The Empire was eternal. And the Empire was afraid. They were not afraid of rebels or rival houses. They were afraid of prophecy. Behind her, the great doors parted with a whisper. Metal boots echoed across crystal floors. She did not turn. She already knew who it was. Commander Kale Vyrek stopped 3 paces behind her.
Human.
Outsider. The only non-Avarian permitted within the inner palace. You summoned me, Your Majesty. His voice was steady, unadorned. Humans did not sing their words as Avarians did. They struck them like tools. Seralith folded her hands behind her back. The High Council insists the prophecy must be addressed. The one about fire?
Kale asked.
The one about me. She turned then, violet eyes reflecting distant explosions. It says the queen will be tested by flame, that she will either burn alone or rise bound to the firebringer. Kale's brow tightened. And they think I'm the firebringer. They do not think, she said softly. They fear. The prophecy had been unearthed from the ancient vaults beneath the first palace. It was older than the empire itself. Older than the stars avarice had conquered. It spoke of a ruler who would stand at the brink of annihilation when the sun itself would turn against the throne. And it spoke of a stranger who would walk through fire without fear. Humans had only joined the empire 40 years ago. Fierce, adaptive, dangerously creative. They did not bow easily. They did not frighten easily. And Kale Vyrek least of all. The council wants me removed, he said calmly. They want you executed. He absorbed that without flinching. Seralith stepped closer. I refuse.
Why?
She held his gaze longer than protocol allowed. Because I do not fear fire. The Empire's sun, Helier, had begun to destabilize 6 cycles earlier. At first it was minor fluctuations, radiation spikes, gravitational tremors. Imperial scientists assured the court it was manageable. Then the outer colonies began to fall silent. Now Helier pulsed unnaturally, flares erupting with increasing violence. Projections showed a catastrophic solar storm would strike Avaris Prime within days. The celestial shield, an ancient energy lattice encasing the planet, could deflect ordinary storms. But Helier's coming eruption was no ordinary storm. It would tear through the shield like silk. Unless someone reactivated the star crucible. The crucible was a relic from the Empire's earliest era, buried deep within Helier's corona. It had once stabilized the young star during its volatile formation. No one had touched it in millennia, because reaching it meant flying directly into the sun. No Avarian ship could survive the journey. But human vessels were built differently. Less elegant. More resilient. The High Council had convened in the Hall of Luminaries. Ancient banners drifted in anti-grav currents as nobles argued in rising harmonics. You risk the dynasty for a primitive. Lord Zyron hissed, silver crests flaring. He is not primitive, Seralith replied from the throne. He is capable. He is human. And I am queen. Silence followed that. Zyron's eyes narrowed. Even if he reaches the crucible, the activation requires manual ignition within the stellar core. It is suicide. Kale stood in the center of the chamber, unbound, unafraid. Then it is fortunate, he said evenly, that humans have a history of doing impossible things. The council murmured with distaste. Seralith descended the steps of her throne. The star crucible must be reignited. Our fleets cannot shield every world. Billions will die. She stopped before Kale. If you accept this mission, Commander, you will likely not return. Kale's gaze softened, just slightly. If I don't accept it, they definitely won't. The chamber fell silent again. Very well, Saralith declared. Prepare the human vessel. Commander Kale Virek will fly at dawn. They stood alone in the launch hangar hours later. The human ship Vanguard was squat, armored, built like a bunker with engines. Engineers scrambled across its hull, reinforcing thermal plating beyond safe tolerances. You don't have to do this, Saralith said quietly. Kale adjusted his gloves.
Yes.
I do. For the Empire? For you. The words struck harder than any solar flare. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You barely know me. I know you stayed the Council's hand when it would have been easier not to. He met her eyes. I know you care about lives outside this palace. He hesitated. And I know that when Helier first flared, you didn't look at the throne. You looked at the sky. Her breath caught. You're not afraid of losing power, he said. You're afraid of losing people. Silence stretched between them, heavy and bright. Kale, she whispered. He removed a small metallic band from his wrist, a human insignia ring. He pressed it into her palm. In case I don't make it back. Avarian queens did not show emotion in public. This was not public. She closed her fingers around the ring. You will return, she said, voice firm despite the tremor beneath. That is not hope. It is command. He smiled faintly. I'll do my best to obey. Helia roared like a living god as Vanguard pierced its outer corona. Warning alarms screamed. The ship's hull glowed white-hot. Plasma waves battered shields already stretched to breaking. Inside the cockpit, Kale gritted his teeth, fingers flying across manual overrides. Automated systems had failed minutes ago. Thermal integrity at 30%. The AI crackled. Good enough, Kale muttered. The star crucible loomed ahead, a titanic lattice of ancient alloy orbiting within the star's heart. Most of it had melted over centuries of neglect. Only this central ignition spire remained intact. He would have one chance. The docking clamps screamed as they latched onto the spire. External cameras burned out instantly. Radiation lethal, the AI warned. Yeah, Kale said softly. I noticed. He sealed his suit and stepped into the airlock. The hatch opened onto pure inferno. Flame did not behave like ordinary fire here. It twisted, alive, threads of incandescent fury wrapping around his suit. Heat indicators spiked beyond calibrated limits. He stepped forward anyway. Each movement felt like wading through molten glass. The crucible's ignition console lay 30 meters ahead, a relic of another age, powered by something deeper than physics. He stumbled as a solar surge struck, hurling him against the spire. Armor cracked. Oxygen levels dipped. He forced himself up. One step at a time, he whispered. His suit began to melt. Warning lights went dark. Pain lanced through him as heat breached insulation. He tasted blood. His vision blurred, but he kept walking. Back on Avarice Prime, Saralith stood in the observatory chamber, eyes locked on fading telemetry. Signal degrading, an advisor said. She did not respond. Structural failure imminent. Still she said nothing. Then, a pulse erupted from Helier's core, brighter than any flare before it. The crucible ignited. A wave of stabilizing energy surged outward, rippling across the star. Radiation levels plummeted. Gravitational turbulence eased. Across the Empire, sensors recalibrated in disbelief. Helier was steady. In the observatory, silence reigned. Do we have his signal? Seralith asked. The technician swallowed. Negative, Your Majesty. Her fingers tightened around the human ring. 3 days later, the Empire held a memorial. The High Council stood in solemn formation. Citizens gathered in the trillions across every broadcast channel. A human had saved them, an outsider, a primitive. Seralith stood before the assembled court. Commander Kale Vyrek walked into the heart of our sun, she began, voice carrying across worlds. He knew the cost. Murmurs rippled.
He was not a Varian.
He was not noble-born. He did not carry ancient blood. She raised her chin. He carried courage. The council shifted uneasily. He walked into the flames for us. For this empire. For me.
Gasps.
And so hear me now. Her voice sharpened into command. From this day forward, humans are no longer provisional members of the empire. They are full citizens under my crown. Outrage flickered across noble faces. And more, she continued. I declare Commander Kale Vyrek protector of avarice, eternal in title and honor. A symbolic gesture, some thought. Until alarms erupted across the chamber. A ship had emerged from Helios' outer orbit. Burned.
Broken.
Barely intact. But alive. The Vanguard limped toward Avarice Prime on failing thrusters. In the hangar, medics rushed forward as the hatch flew open. Kale collapsed onto the deck, armor fused to skin, body ravaged by radiation. But breathing. Seralith reached him before anyone else. He looked up through cracked visor glass. Told you, he rasped. Did my best. Tears streaked her luminous skin. You disobeyed my command, she said softly. His brow furrowed weakly. I ordered you to return, she whispered. A faint smile tugged at his lips. Guess I'm still good at following orders. Recovery took months. Human biology proved as stubborn as legend claimed. Where Avarian physicians predicted fatal collapse, Kale endured.
Scarred.
Changed. But alive. And during that time, something else shifted. Public opinion transformed. Humans were no longer tolerated. They were celebrated. Stories spread of Kale's march through living flame. Children wore imitation armor. Songs were composed in his honor. The High Council found their resistance weakening under popular will. On the day Kale finally stood unaided, Seralith summoned the full court once more. He entered not in uniform, but in formal black attire bearing both human and Avarian sigils. Whispers filled the hall. Seralith rose from her throne. When the prophecy spoke of flame, she said, many believed it foretold my destruction. She descended the steps. But prophecy is not destiny. It is choice. She stopped before Kale. It said I would rise bound to the Firebringer. The chamber held its breath. Seralith removed her crown. Gasps echoed like thunder. Today, she declared, I bind my reign not through conquest or bloodline, but through unity. She turned to Kale. Commander Kale Vyrek, you walked into the heart of a star without hesitation. Not for glory, not for power, but for lives not your own. She extended her hand. Stand with me, not as subject, not as soldier. Her voice softened, but carried across every world. Stand with me as equal. The council erupted in shock. Interspecies union between monarch and foreigner was unprecedented, unthinkable, revolutionary. Kale looked at her hand, then at the Empire watching. You're about to make history, he murmured. She smiled faintly. I prefer to make the future. He took her hand. The bond flared, not mystical, but symbolic. Human resilience and Avarian brilliance intertwined before trillions of witnesses. In that moment, the Empire did not fracture. It transformed. Helia burned steady in the sky, its fury tamed not by ancient relic alone, but by choice, by sacrifice, by love forged in fire. And across the stars, a new declaration echoed louder than any prophecy. The Empire would never fear the flames again, because when fire came, they would walk into it together,